Another episode of Just Be Handy. Today I'm going to be changing front brakes. I got a rock or two in my rotors and it ate up pads, and one of the pads wasn't moving well, so I just wanted to show you a typical Toyota front brake change. Now I'm going to be doing it on a Highlander, but this is same for the Camrys, Corollas, Siennas. Typical front wheel drive from the 2000s, brake pad change and rotor change. And I'll some of the equipment to get and maybe some of the homework to do ahead of time. Right there I have a printout from my local library. They have the auto repair source that most of you may have available. And it tells me the torque specifications for the brackets and for the caliper. I have 14 and 17 millimeter ratchets and sockets and everything ready to go. A couple of torque wrenches. I am going to be changing my rotors with the Raybestos. These are coated. So for my salty region, northern Wisconsin areas, I took out the rotor here. I found a couple of screws or bolts from my bin that fit the thread so we can pop the rotors off. Worst case, if the rotors aren't coming off, I would recommend using something like this for pulling the rotors off. Do not use a sledgehammer or hammer like some people show, because in about 200 miles you're going to take out your bearings, wheel bearings, because that's where a lot of this shock goes into. And then I'm going to be using the AKEBONO pads. They're really good. I was not happy with the pads I had before. So this will be a nice change for that. So also I'll show you what I use for cleaning the brakes. This is the brake cleaner I prefer. And what I've done here already is taken off the bottom 14 millimeter bolt. And as you can see, one side is thicker than the other, meaning that something got lodged in there or the pins were not moving freely. So something happened along the way for this side, but I'm just going to go ahead and change them. Like I said, I had some rocks get into my pads during the driving through construction, and it's caused all kinds of havoc. I'll have links for all the stuff I'm using today in the description below, and some of the torque specifications and so on. So let's get started. Alright, one of the things to note is for the bracket to come off, you need to take out this bolt and the bottom bolt over here. So these two have to come off, so this bracket can be removed, and then you could get the rotor off. And again, there's those two holes I was talking about, those two holes right there, to try and get the rotor out. Alright guys, I'm going to take this whole thing off, and basically 14 millimeter for the caliper to get it out of the way, and then I'll lay it on a box or hang it, and then we'll get this bracket off, and that's 17 millimeter. Alright guys, I ended up taking this 12 millimeter bolt off so that I could rest the caliper onto the box here, and then I did end up going in with my breaker bar and a 17 millimeter socket. I broke these two loose and then started backing them off little by little, because if you do one and then you go to do the other, it might make the whole bracket pivot up. So just take your time with that. Alright, I also took the bracket off right here with the whole mechanism. These are moving freely, so should have acted really well, but again, I started hearing the squealing a little bit, and I'm seeing that one pad is wearing more than the other. So what I'm going to do is just replace everything right now, make sure these are greased, and I'll clean everything up really well. Make sure the new parts from the AKEBONO kit came with the new steel. That'll be all replaced so that I'll have good floating pads in here and not sticking. So that could have been caused by that. And then I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little chipping in there. Again, I did go and get some rocks that got into the pads during a construction site. But it was real easy to take this one out by driving those bolts. So now this will all come out, and we'll clean up the new one and put it on. All right, guys, we'll show you that next. Okay, one of the things you could do is get a piece of wood and then this caliper tool to basically bring the caliper back in until it bottoms out, and then you could put in the new pads. This will make your life a lot easier. Some people like to use a C-channel clamp to do that. You could do that if you don't have one of these, but these are dirt cheap and a good investment if you have this style ABS. There's some ABS that requires a screwing type and all that, but these are a simple ABS system. All right. As you can see here, I just bottomed it all out till it got to the end. Then we'll take this off and inspect for any leaks or fluid anywhere, also to make sure we don't have a bad caliper before we proceed. So as you can see, everything looks dry. Everything looks good. The seals look good, so we can continue. Hey, it's always best to just get your bracket on a vise if at all possible, but you can do this by hand. But sometimes you need a lot of persuasion to be able to break these loose. They don't come out as easily as you'd think, and you need to hammer it off and so on. So in this case, I'm going to have to hammer this guy off, and then we'll replace these. Take the pins out, and then I like to spray fluid in here, clean them out really well with fluid, and then repack them with the proper brake grease, and I'll show you more about that in a minute. And sometimes the kits come with the proper brake grease, like I think these AKEBONOs did, so we'll end up using that, or there's an alternative. Another thing to notice is where the little squealer is. I call them squealers. So you put it on the inside pad, and that's where the location of it is when you're working on your bench, and that way you'll get it right every time. I have the new pads here. They have the backing on them, just like these old ones did. It has the new stainless steel hardware. A little different, so I'll take a look at that, and then it's got the lube. Okay, we'll continue working with this. So it looks like the construction site really did the construction that I've been driving through, and I have, like I said, 50 miles each way, has coated a lot of dirt and stuff in here, and that's probably what held up the one caliper. I mean, this is something that can be taken care of by regular routine maintenance, like every 3,000 miles opening things up to clean things up. But you can see some debris went through there and really wreaked havoc on my brakes from the construction sites. So I'm just going to clean this up and get going. And what I noticed is with the new AKEBONO hardware, this design is probably there for a reason. These are the proper brakes for it, so we'll go with that. There's instructions in here on that as to why to use these over the others. The replacement clips, why they're different than the OE. So these guys know what they're doing, so we're going to do that. All right. Okay, one of the things I found out while I was doing this and cleaning, I took off the boots, I sprayed everything, then I cleaned it with this wire brush here in all the grooves and hit it with brake parts cleaner. Then I took out the pins. The pins I actually took out and cleaned also, and the grooves are all cleaned. I just put brake parts cleaner in there and just kept going until no grease was coming out on them. One of the things I found was one of the boots had a little cut in it, so I got a little kit from the local store for changing the boots, and they just pop in real easy, and then you could go on your merry way. It comes with the little rubber deals too that go on the end of the one bolt. This is the bottom. Just make sure you know where they came out of. So the best thing is when you take them out, just kind of lay them where they go on your bench or whatever you're working with. Or you get new pins to replace, but make sure you know which one went where. All right. Okay, here's what I've decided to use for the pins. I will use the ceramic high performance lube for the pins, and I will use the Molly stuff that they gave me with the brake pads for the shims for the steel brackets that AKEBONO wants me to use. So these will ride on the pads. These will ride on the pins, and I'll put links for all this in the description below. So what I like to do with the pins is I put that rubber on there, made sure everything was clean. I put it on the tip because that grease will help actually push. Make sure that whole guy is greased. And then just a light coat. You don't need more. And then put it in. Again, I put in the new boots, and you want to just slowly push it in because it's going to be. Then when you get it in, make sure it actually pushes out on its own. Okay, just like that. And then you could push it home and put the boot around it. I'll show you that. Make sure the boot gets around it too. There we go. You can see it really pulls it out. It really wants to push the brake pads out when it's functioning properly, and that's kind of what you want right there. All right, and it will be a little tough to put it back on because it likes to push it back out. So that's really what you kind of want these to do. Again, we'll put some of this on the edge, and then the top one has got these flats. So we'll definitely fill that up. Sorry, it's a very windy day today. And then put it in, and it too should just kind of push out, and it will get it all set up here. All right. Next. Okay, what I like to do is just use brake parts cleaner, spray the running surfaces with it, let it sit for a while, and then just take paper towel and just rub that off. That gets all the oils that they have for protecting it off of there, and I do it in the box so it just soaks it all up. Then I'll flip this over and do the same thing, but you can see the brake parts cleaner is moving away. I'll spray it again and then just use paper towel on it. All right, here we go. Just with the paper towel, you can see it just takes off all the oils that are on there for shipping and making sure it's not going to rust. And then I'll flip it over and do the same thing, and then it'll go on the vehicle. Okay, before putting the rotor on, I just took some anti-seize And I put it on here and here because when the rotor goes on, it's going to have a press fit against here mostly. So we'll just get the rotor on. There we go, and you can see it'll be a snug fit, and then usually what you get is a little rust in there. So that's the rotor, and then I'll get the caliper put on next, and then we'll go from there. Alright guys, one of the things that I just noticed is these little tabs here have to be to the outside. So when you put these new hardware on, make sure these little tabs are to the outside. Otherwise they interfere with the function of the brake pads, okay? So I went back and just redid that. So now I'm going to put this bracket on and then put the pads on. Okay, I thought this would be a good point to show you here. I got the lower nut on, and then I'm just going to swing this over. As you remember, we opened up this caliper. These pads are in. I just have these hand tight for the bracket right now. I'm going to swing it over and then put in this 14mm bolt, and then I'll torque everything up. Remember, you have to push this in properly so that it sits there, and then I'll just go once over again with some brake parts cleaner, make sure everything is clean. I won't hit these areas here where the grease sits, and then torque everything up per the recommendation. Okay, just to recap, we tightened these floating caliper bolts to 25 foot-pounds, these bolts for the bracket to 80 foot-pounds. I used the AKEBONO pads, the Raybestos rotors that are made for high salt and rust areas, and this is kind of what it's going to look like. You could see here too, a way to inspect brakes when you take a wheel off is to look at the pad thickness there, and also look through this little inspection hole that they have at the top of your rotor, at the top of the calipers. You could see the pads and their thickness in there. Let's see if we can get that a little better lighting. There we go. You can see the internal pad and the external pad thickness. So when you take your wheel off, that's a good way to check for it. All right, there you have it. Check the link below. I'll have some affiliate links that help this channel at no cost to you. And again, just be handy. Save yourself quite a bit of money. All right, have a good day.